All right, mates, imagine a world where, like, your medical records are totally hack-proof. Fake drugs are a thing of the past, and insurance claims don't make you want to pull your hair out.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, right? Well, blockchain is actually making that happen in healthcare.
It is pretty amazing stuff.
But before we really dig into it, we found that 60% of you guys aren't following us yet. So please do us a huge favor, hit that follow button and collect our episodes on pods.media.
Yeah, your support means a lot to us. Helps us keep doing this.
Yeah, thanks guys. So let's dive straight in. Today we're going on a deep dive into how blockchain technology is being used in healthcare.
Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, we've got a ton of info here about how this is actually moving from theory to reality.
Yeah, exactly. We're looking at how this tech, which you might normally think of with like crypto and Bitcoin and things like that, how it's actually being used to solve some really big problems in healthcare right now.
Yeah, and our mission today is pretty simple. Cut through all the jargon, all the techie stuff, and understand what this actually means for you, the listener.
Right.
We want to explore how blockchain aims to solve those everyday pain points for everyone, like keeping your health data secure, making sure your meds are the real deal, and maybe even making those insurance headaches a thing of the past.
Yeah, let's do it.
Our sources highlight a few key areas where blockchain is already making waves. Things like the security of your sensitive medical information and giving you more control over your own health records, and even stamping out those counterfeit drugs.
Huge problems, yeah.
Okay, so let's get down to the basics. For those of us who aren't blockchain experts. Can you give us the core concept of blockchain in simple terms?
Absolutely. So think of blockchain as like a super secure digital ledger.
Okay.
It's kind of like a chain of digital blocks, each one containing information. And what makes it so strong is that once a block is added to that chain, it's almost impossible to change it.
So it's tamper-proof.
Yeah, exactly. And it's this like distributed nature where like tons of computers all have a copy of the data and they're all connected cryptographically that makes it really difficult for any one person to mess with the system.
So like even if one computer goes down, the data is still safe on all the others.
Exactly. It's like a safety net for your information. And this tamper-proof quality, that's what makes it so exciting for healthcare.
Okay, I get it. So how is this actually being put to use in healthcare right now, according to what we've been reading?
Well, there are a bunch of applications. Securing medical records is a big one.
Makes sense.
Since that data is spread across the network and it's encrypted, it becomes a much harder target for hackers.
Right.
We're also seeing a lot of work in tracking pharmaceuticals, like from the factory all the way to the pharmacy.
Oh, wow. So you can follow the journey of a drug.
Yeah, exactly. This end-to-end visibility is key to fighting those counterfeit meds.
That's really important.
And then there's the potential for streamlining insurance claims using what are called smart contracts.
Smart contracts.
Yeah.
Okay, that
Yeah.
sounds interesting. Could you break that down for us?
Yeah, so think of them as like pre-programmed agreements on the blockchain.
Okay.
Once certain conditions are met, like, digitally verified, a diagnosis is recorded in your medical records, boom, the contract automatically triggers the next step.
Like what?
Like an insurance payment without any paperwork or manuals.
So it just all happens automatically.
Yeah, it could really speed things up.
Wow. Our sources suggest this isn't just a futuristic idea. It's happening right now all over the world.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We're seeing projects pop up globally. In Kenya, they're focusing on secure data management systems. And in Singapore, they're working on transparent pharmaceutical supply chains.
So it's a global trend.
It really is. It's a movement towards better healthcare for everyone using this technology.
Okay, so we've got a sense of what's happening, but let's bring it back to the listener. Why should you care about this?
Okay.
What are the real benefits for you and your health?
That's the key question, right? So let's look at the direct impact. Think about the rising threat of cyber attacks. Did you know that ransomware attacks on hospitals doubled in 2024?
Wow, that's scary.
Yeah, and it cost billions of dollars a decentralized system like blockchain. It's just much more resilient against these attacks because there's no one central point for hackers to hit.
Right, because the data is everywhere, so they can't just take down one server and get everything.
Exactly. It's much safer.
That's a huge point. Nobody wants their medical history held hostage by hackers.
Exactly.
What other advantages are there for us as patients?
Well, another big one is control over your own medical records. Our sources say that like 80% of patients want to own and control their health data.
Really, 80%? Wow.
Yeah, and blockchain can make that happen. It gives you the power to decide who can see your information and when.
So it's like having a digital vault for your medical history that you control.
Exactly, a secure and private space.
That's a really interesting way to think about our health information. What about the issue of fake medications? That's always a scary thought.
It's a huge problem, especially in developing countries. The WHO estimates that about 10% of medicines in those regions are counterfeit.
10%, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's scary. And blockchain can help because it can track a drug's journey every step of the way, so you know it's the real deal.
Wow. So it's like a guarantee of authenticity.
Exactly. It could prevent a lot of harm and even save lives.
That's incredible. And you mentioned insurance before. Can blockchain really make dealing with insurance less of a hassle?
It definitely has the potential. Those smart contracts we talked about, they can automate so much of the claims process. Imagine a confirmed diagnosis and treatment plan that's verified on the blockchain boom payment process is triggered automatically.
No more waiting on hold with the insurance company.
Exactly. It could cut processing times by like 50% and just make everything smoother.
That would be a dream come true. All right, so this all sounds amazing. Are there any real-world examples of this actually working? Like, who are the innovators leading the way?
Oh yeah, there are some really cool examples. Adanian Labs in Kenya, they've developed a platform called AIA Record, which connects a bunch of healthcare facilities, like around 150 hospitals and clinics, and they're serving over 350,000 patients with this secure data management system.
That's pretty impressive, especially in a region where infrastructure can be a challenge.
It really is. And then you've got Guard Time in Estonia. They've managed to secure a whopping 99% of patient data in their national e-health system, which is over 1 million records.
99%, that's incredible.
Yeah, they're showing what's possible on a national level with blockchain.
Estonia is really ahead of the game when it comes to digital stuff. What about in the U.S.? Any interesting projects happening there?
For sure. In the U.S., you've got collaborations like IBM and the FDA working together to make pharmaceutical supply chains more transparent and secure.
That's a big deal, the FDA being involved.
Yeah, they're serious about this. Their 2024 trials reportedly showed a 20% reduction in counterfeit drugs.
That's a huge impact. Are there other cool projects going on elsewhere in the world?
Oh yeah, in Germany, Charity Hospital and the pharmaceutical company Boehringer Ingelheim, they've been using blockchain since 2024 to manage data from clinical trials.
Interesting, for clinical trials.
Yeah, it can really improve transparency and integrity of research, maybe even by like 25%.
They can lead to faster breakthroughs.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And in Singapore, the Health Sciences Authority, they ran a pilot program in 2024, also focused on tracking pharmaceuticals, and they saw similar results, like a 15% reduction in counterfeits.
So it's really happening. It's not just talk anymore. We're seeing blockchain actually make a difference in healthcare.
It's gaining momentum.
But I'm sure there are still hurdles, right? It can't be all smooth sailing. What are some of the big challenges facing wider adoption of blockchain in healthcare?
Yeah, you're right. There are definitely challenges. One of the main ones is just the slow pace of adoption in the healthcare industry.
They can be slow to change, can't they?
Yeah, hospitals and providers are often cautious about new tech. And, our sources say that only about 20% were really exploring blockchain back in 2024.
Yeah, it's a big change, and the technology itself is pretty complex.
Yeah, that's a barrier for some folks, too.
Makes sense. Healthcare is a very regulated industry, and they tend to be risk averse. Speaking of regulations.
Exactly. The laws and regulations around healthcare, they were mostly created before blockchain even existed.
Right. They weren't thinking about this kind of tech.
Exactly. So it can be tough to apply those rules to decentralized systems like GDPR, for example, which gives people the right to have their data deleted. That's hard to do with blockchain because it's immutable. Once data is recorded, it's pretty much there for good.
That's a tricky situation. How do you reconcile those two things?
It's a big question, yeah. Another challenge is scalability. Healthcare generates tons of data every day.
Oh, yeah, massive amount.
And current blockchain tech, it sometimes struggles to handle that much information, especially large files like radiology images.
Right, those are huge.
Yeah, so they often need to use off-chain storage, which adds complexity and cost.
So the tech itself still has some limitations.
Yeah, it needs to keep evolving to meet the demands of healthcare. And then there's the issue of interoperability. Hospitals use so many different software systems.
Yeah, it's a mess of different programs.
It is. And getting all those systems to talk to each other on a single blockchain, that's a huge challenge.
It's like trying to get everyone to speak the same language.
Exactly, a digital language. And then finally, there's the question of how do we balance the transparency of blockchain with the need for patient privacy?
That's a big one.
It is. Private blockchains can offer more control over who sees the data, but even those aren't completely immune to security risks like DDoS attacks.
Especially with so much sensitive information.
Yeah, so it's a delicate balance between transparency for things like supply chain tracking and keeping patient data confidential.
So lots of challenges still to overcome. But where do you see things headed? What trends should we be watching for in the future of blockchain in healthcare?
Well, we're already seeing a lot of interest in using blockchain for clinical trials, like that example in Germany. It has the potential to make research more transparent and trustworthy, and maybe even help with recruiting patients.
Yeah, they could really speed up medical progress.
Definitely. And we're also likely to see more blockchain in supply chain management, not just for pharmaceuticals, but for medical devices, equipment, even organs for transplants.
Wow, that's getting into some serious life-saving stuff.
Yeah, making sure those supplies are safe and traceable is crucial, and there's a lot of work being done in the US and Singapore in that area.
It's exciting to see those advancements. Another trend to watch is the progress in improving interoperability between all those different healthcare IT systems.
Right. That's key.
Our sources suggest that we could see maybe even 50% more hospitals able to share data securely through blockchain soon.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, it would be a game changer for doctors to be able to see a patient's entire medical history, no matter where they've been treated.
Yeah, a complete and up-to-date picture.
That's the dream, right? And finally, the market for blockchain in healthcare is expected to grow massively, something like from $42 million in 2023 to $124 million by 2025.
That's huge.
Yeah, that kind of investment shows that people really believe in the power of this technology to transform healthcare.
It's a sign of things to come.
So stepping back and looking at the big picture, what's your take on the future of blockchain in healthcare?
Well, I think blockchain has huge potential to scale up in healthcare advancements in the technology itself, like faster and more efficient platforms like Hyperledger Fabric. They're hoping to overcome some of the limitations we talked about.
Right.
I think we could realistically see something like 80% of hospitals using blockchain in some way by 2030.
Wow, that's a bold prediction.
Yeah, I think it's possible, and I also believe that patients will start to trust blockchain-based systems more than traditional methods. You know, maybe even 60% of patients feeling good about using these systems by the mid-2020s.
That's a big shift in trust.
Yeah, it's about feeling secure and empowered, and blockchain offers that. But of course, there are still those challenges we discussed.
Right, the pace of adoption and the regulatory hurdles, those are still big obstacles.
They are. So while the long-term potential is huge, the road to getting there might be a bit...
It's a journey we're on together, right? So ultimately, we come back to that question. Can blockchain really scale globally in the complex world of healthcare without hitting some major roadblocks?
Yeah, it's the million-dollar question.
It is, and it seems like the answer is still unfolding, but there's definitely a lot of exciting progress happening.
Yeah, it's a dynamic space for sure.
Okay, so to wrap up our deep dive today, we've explored how blockchain technology is intersecting with healthcare.
It's fascinating stuff.
We've seen how it can improve the security of your medical data, give you more control over that information, streamline things like insurance claims, and help fight counterfeit drugs.
Lots of potential benefits.
And we've looked at real-world examples of blockchain in action, as well as the challenges that need to be addressed.
Right, it's not a perfect solution yet.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on, given all the potential benefits and the challenges of adoption regulations and the need for the technology to scale in this complex healthcare system. What single factor do you think will ultimately determine whether blockchain succeeds or fails in healthcare?
Oh, that's a tough one.
It's a question of innovation versus reality in a field that affects all of us.
A lot to think about.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of blockchain and healthcare.
It's been a pleasure.
Till next time, stay curious.
And stay healthy.